Alright everybody, hey, it's me and Buster Green, and here's my next big update on G-Qux, which I'm going to be trying my hardest to call G-Qux here, because the title has basically been confirmed as you say it like quacks. I'm going to maybe start writing it as QAX, because the 5 U's told me just trigger me to say Qux, and I feel like if I don't write it as QAX, I'm going to go back to the duck quacking. So anyway, the film came out in Japan last Friday, and it's been a week, and I have not seen this film yet, but in Japan, the reactions are just so good. It was the #1 film in Japan, slamming down with a $4 million box office and beating the long-awaited Hatsune Miku film, which was announced years ago, and only got a modest $2 million box office. I'm not sure if I really care about the Miku movie, but I love Miku as a person and as a concept, so I'll probably see the Miku movie eventually. Now, the early reactions to G-Qux otherwise are borderline religious praise that Hideki Anno has restored greatness in Gundam and basically got to animate his personal Gundam headcanon fanfic in full theatrical splendor with like a huge budget. Now, while I'm semi-avoiding spoilers for this film, I am going to go over the film's side material book, which itself is a gigantic spoiler because it goes over the film's entire alternate UC timeline. And out of respect for you guys, because I know a bunch of YouTubers have already gone over their thoughts on this timeline, I'm going to skip over any events that are basically everything you've already seen in the OVA series Gundam The Origin. So I'm super jealous that even though this movie is coming out February 28th, the last day of American February, I'm not expecting the side material book to be released here, and that makes me sad because I really want it. That being said, before we get into the spoilers, one big thing people are discussing right now is how direct a connection there is between G-Qux and Gundam The Origin, and for that matter, Gundam The Origin and the original Gundam. I personally rewatched the entirety of Gundam The Origin yesterday, and I think Origin really works as a great refresher on early UC and that untold first half of the war, and the general way that Side 3 went from being a democratic republic to a fascist principality controlled by 3 major oligarch families. I should mention, though, that the original Gundam, Gundam The Origin OVA, especially Gundam The Origin manga, and G-Qux all had their own slightly alternate universe takes on Gundam, and especially the various Mecha in the Universal Century timeline. And when you take a very close look at them, they majorly contradict each other ultimately. So with that out of the way, I'm going to go over, for starters, the early development of the Zaku, because just between Origin and the original Gundam, there's a lot of contradictions. The biggest contradiction between them is that the Origin OVA retcons the first mobile suit from the MS-01 Crabman to the mobile worker MW-01. Technically, on top of that, the entire first 4 mobile suits are pretty different between the continuities. Alright, so sorting out the early development of the Zaku is honestly very hard work because there's been a lot of takes on it over the years, starting from 1981 with the Crabman story. There's a lot of information that contradicts other later information. Now, this spread here from a 1998 Gundam magazine indicates that there was a ZI-XA2 before the Crabman, but supposedly this version was malfunctional and didn't work. The MS-01 Crabman was the first one that could work without exploding, and then if you fully just follow what's on this page, MS-02 and MS-03 were minor improvements on that, mostly with improved arms, and then the MS-04 was the fully finished, finally improved Crabman. This improved Crabman resembles the MS-03 WAF from Gundam The Origin, but isn't a perfect match for that. Also, I really like the design of the WAF because it just feels like it's a Zaku optimized for space exploration and not combat. I almost want to get the kit now. But meanwhile, back to the Origin manga, MS-01, 2, and 3 are all different variations on mobile workers with minor state improvements until you get to MS-04, which is just straight up the prototype Zaku. The prototype Zaku is almost always MS-04, except again in Gundam The Origin anime, where in another contradiction it's randomly the Bugu, which as far as I know was only used by Rambo Rel, but an orange mass production design does exist, I just don't remember seeing it ever. Then I found another page here from Gundam Ace, which has a third completely unrelated design for the prototype Zaku, making me now wonder if the prototype Zaku was just a blanket term for any mobile suits designed during this time period. And back to MS-03 again, the OFMS team then had another unnamed MS-03, which sort of looks like an unfinished Zaku yet again. Anyway, let's move on. And then after that, MS-05 is the Zaku 1. The Zaku 1 was featured heavily in the Gundam The Origin OVA, but is barely featured in the original UC continuity, with the main difference in lore being that in the original UC, the Zaku 1 was not intended to be a war machine, but was adapted for war when the war broke out, with some Zaku 1s even being adapted into the superior Zaku 1 sniper type, whereas in the Origin, They basically retconned it that the Zaku 1 was made specifically for war, but it was like produced in like limited numbers and only given out as like a first edition type Zaku to the most elite Zeon pilots capable of using it. Either way, after that, in both continuities, the Zaku 2 ultimately becomes the standard mass production model for the rest of the war. Now, otherwise, beyond that, I want to say the Red Comet Origin OVA tries to keep things somewhat close to the UC canon without too much deviation, so you can watch it and then watch the original Gundam in like a smooth flow. But then when you get to the Quux Dome movie, that movie skews a lot closer to the Origin manga continuity, and I really don't have time to go over all the crazy differences. And I really don't have time today to go over all the crazy differences in the Origin manga, but read it if you have enough money to buy it. For the most part, all the Zeon suits are designed to be wider and shorter, and most of the Gundams seem to be slightly more cohesively designed, taking parts from the Gun Cannon and the GM, so it all feels connected. I bring this up because it really matters when we go to G-Qux, because they did kind of the same thing. Now that being said, I think I have to get into the G-Qux spoilers now, so here comes the new stuff at you guys. So I'm going to be basing some of this information I'm telling you on secondhand rumors that people have told me and that I can't validate because it's like Japanese information. I'm not going to be able to clearly point out all the time when it is a rumor too, because some of this stuff has just been dumped on me for weeks now and it's just like settled in my brain already. But if some of the stuff I mentioned now turns out to be untrue later, I apologize in advance. So first things first, I just told you guys about the differences in the development of the Zaku between the original UC and Gundam the Origin. In G-Qux, things seemingly play out much differently with the Zaku developments as well. The biggest thing we know is that somehow the Zaku was developed from a mobile worker to a war mobile suit, but all the developments resulting in that ended us with having an MSO6 Zaku, not a Zaku 2, but still the MSO6. Now, from what I've heard in the Japanese behind-the-scenes interview, my interpretation of what the G-Qux staff said in Japanese was that they were trying to explain that the classic Gundam Zaku was treated as sort of this like henchman character, and for the redesign here, they've tried to reduce the Zaku down to more of a functional vehicle or more like a class of vehicle. So like a Zaku is like saying it's a boat or a car. It's the difference in between saying this is a robot named a Zaku and just all these guys who are like green with one eyes, they're all Zakus. And that being said, most of the Zakus and G-Qux are being used for shipping and construction initially before the war breaks out. I guess the implication here is that most of the Zeon forces are primarily just using Zakus, just with various different loadouts and equipment, because the Zaku in G-Qux is meant to be kind of like a Swiss Army knife, in that you can load it up any way you want and make your own Zaku that way. Now then on the breakdown pages, they show a variety of Zakus that are featured in G-Qux. Here's the civilian Zaku. I believe this is the equivalent of the Zaku 1 because it has no weapon loadout and it has the flat shoulders. Then here's another civilian Zaku with more of a construction loadout. Then we have the Clan Pomeranian Clan Battle Zaku, which will surely play a part of the story, and the SSP Police Zaku in both blue and black. Note that the black version has a thruster. Then we get into the 1 Year War era Zakus. Starting off with the yellow test type Zaku, I don't know what this is used for, I guess just testing. And then we come to the classic Char Zaku, which looks exactly how you'd expect. It's got that classic Char antenna, and it's got the same color scheme as like Char Zaku in the Origin. Then we move on to the mass production 1 Year War Zaku. This is essentially this universe's Zaku 2 equivalent, and it has everything you could expect from a Zaku, although check out these nice white lines, which kind of remind me of the sleeves mobile suits from Gundam Unicorn. Now, then there's these last two Zakus, and these are probably the most interesting ones. First thing first is Ramba Ral Zaku. Now, Ramba Ral technically never had a Zaku 2, he only had a Zaku 1. And then we have somebody's Pink Zaku. The Pink Zaku is very similar in color scheme to Char Zaku from the TV version, kind of that salmon pink color. But the Char Zaku that we know he has the darker origin red color and the classic Char horn. So I have no idea who's using this Pink Zaku. The Pink Zaku and the Ral Zaku instead have this kind of Kabuto beetle horn, which is something we've never seen before. And also looking at them very closely, the Ral Zaku has the Zaku 1 shoulder patch, which tracks with like Ral having a Zaku 1 before. But then the Pink Zaku has what looks to be an 08th MS Team ground Gundam shield. That's really wild. Then lastly, both the RAL and the Pink have this additional thing over here. Now, I have no idea what this thing is, and I first saw it, I thought it was a big giant claw, kind of similar to like the hands you'd see on a GOG, but on further and closer inspection, it actually looks like it might be like a skirt booster, maybe like the one the GPO3 Stamen has, so I don't know what this is, and I really want to figure this out. Hey, comment section, do you think this is a giant claw or a skirt booster? Let me know what you think. Now that fully covers all the Zeon Zakus that are listed in this book, and as far as the existence of the other mobile suits, that's currently fully up in the air. I know that the ground war battles happen in this universe and still mostly play out in the Federation's favor as before, so I'm guessing based on that the Goofs and the Zakus should still exist because Jabro gets invaded and all that. But I've heard unconfirmed rumors from my friends who've seen the movie that the Dom and Rick Dom line still exist and are shown in this movie, but for whatever reason there's no line art of them in this book. Now, supposedly where the Zeon mobile suit development really deviates is that in this timeline, the MS-14 Gelgoog project was canceled, as well as the Mobile Armor Elmef project and most of the other mobile armors. And I think that's a good time for us to transition and go over the timeline fully now. All right, so I'm just going to do this live because there's a lot in this timeline. Starting off with January 3rd, 0079, the Principality of Zeon formally declares war on the Earth Federation government, sparking the outbreak of the war. January 4th, Zeon military initiates Operation British. The Side 2 colony known as Island Fish begins its descent towards Earth. 4 days later, the Earth Federation's Tiananmen fleet intercepts the descending colony. A fleet battle erupts between Earth Federation and Zeon forces. January 10th, the forward half of the colony intended to strike Jabro splits in half, crashes into City instead. The remaining sections fall into the Pacific Ocean in North America. January 11th, Side 6 declares neutrality. January 13th, this is the only thing that might strike me as slightly off. Zeon forces resume Operation British. This is a curious note here because that seems like a deviation. That being said, it may or may not be. I forget exactly how Operation British fully played out and whether or not Operation British continued before or until the Antarctic Treaty. January 15th, Principality begins its Loom offensive, the Battle of Loom. January 16th, a Zeon mobile suit squadron known as the Black Tri-Stars captures Federation General Revel. January 28th, the Federation government decides to accept a ceasefire treaty proposed by the Principality of Zeon. But then on January 31st, General Revel, having escaped captivity and returned to the Federation, delivers a public address. Despite the treaty being signed, the Federation declares it will continue to fight rather than truly cease hostilities. Then on February 7th, Zeon launches the Planet Invasion, commencing a large-scale troop drop operation onto Earth. Skips ahead to April 1st. Determined to counter Zeon's mobile suit plans, the Federation enacts the V Project. Concurrently, it has implemented the Venison Plan, a fleet reorganization that anticipates the use of mobile suits aboard warships. May 17th, the Principality completes the Space Force Dris Solomon. June, Zeon establishes the Flanagan Agency. June 30th, Zeon finishes construction of its second space fortress of Quux. That tracks with Gundam The Origin. July 7th, the Federation completes the assault carrier Pegasus. August, the Federation begins final testing of its new mobile suits, including the Gundam at Side 7. And here we go, September 19th. This is the day that Gundam starts and the day that the G-Qux Timeline officially goes fully off the rails. Okay, quick glance back before we get into all the juicy new shit. While this timeline does overall sound very close to the original UC timeline, the more I look at it, the wronger this timeline looks, and I'm noticing that actually a lot seems off here. And I blame this on the fact that I literally just rewatched Gundam The Origin yesterday, but I'm seeing a lot of contradictions here, at least with what I saw in The Origin, aside from the proposed continuation of Operation British after January 13th. So this timeline has the Battle of Loom starting on the 15th, but in Origin, it's clearly stated that it starts the 23rd, 10 days later. The planetary invasion of Earth in February sounds okay to me. I remember Origin alluding to Abao Ku not being finished construction yet, but I do find it insane and maybe even impossible that the Operation V project went from greenlit in April to having multiple Gundams finished by August. I find it much more viable that the explanation they gave in The Origin was that Operation V started in UC 0078 almost a year earlier after the first batch of mass production gun cannon were destroyed by Zaku 1s. I don't think, though, this is a contradiction or a mistake, though. I think this is actually a clear difference in the Quux timeline, that the Federation was slower to mobilize their forces and therefore made way more tactical mistakes. But I'm absolutely baffled at how the Earth invasion went, therefore, with the Federation being unarmed for so long, or how they were able to ultimately repel the Zeon after the fact with that outcome. Now, some other minor things seem a little bit off to me, like Revel escaping Zeon by the 31st. In the Origin OVA, it felt like that happened closer to the summer because Char intercepted Revel on his way to Side 7 to get the Gundam. And lastly, there's the minor contradiction of the Flanagan Institute being called the Flanagan Agency, but I'm not sure if this is a contradiction on the name like the Kikaroga, or if the Institute and the Agency are actually two separate entities. Alright, without further delay, this is the moment where Gundam the anime starts, as well as Gundam G-QuuuuuuX starts, going in an opposite direction. A Zeon unit led by Char Aznable infiltrates Side 7, capturing the Federation's newly developed Gundam and seizing the Pegasus. Char, piloting the stolen Gundam, engages the Federation's RX-7801 Gundam, destroying it. During this operation, the Zeon pilot Jean is forced to stand down due to a malfunction in his Zaku and does not participate. Okay, so this is a huge pivot point, and everything here is huge and worth mentioning. So, first things first, the craziest thing is that the G-Qux timeline is entirely blamed on Jean. Jean, the asshole cowboy Zaku pilot who chose to ignore orders and attack Side 7, spurning Amuro Ray into action, causing him to steal the Gundam and therefore win the war for the Federation. None of that happens. Making Jean kind of like the anchor being of the UC timeline, literally Jean fucking up and being just out of control single-handedly lost Zeon the war because it created their greatest enemy. And this like plays that out perfectly and insanely. Now, I know from the spoilers that a big fight here is Char fighting the RX-7801 Gundam. I'm going to quick go over that. I don't know exactly how the fight will go out, but I think it's worth mentioning once again that the RX-7801 Gundam originally came up in Mobile Suit Variations, the MSV project from the early 80s. For G-Qux, it's a little bit different. It's got the same paint job as the old version, but it's got a new head. The new head is really unique. Hold on. Is that the same head as the G-Qux gun cannon? That's pretty close to the gun cannon head. What I like about this is if you guys have read Gundam the Origin manga, the RX-7801 is in there too, and in that story, it's got like a complete like yellow paint job, and it's got a similar visor. In this, it looks like they gave it like the gun cannon head, but with like a V-fin, which is kind of cool. Makes it really different from the other Gundams. By the way, I suppose it's also worth mentioning at this time that let's go over the RX-78-2. So, yeah, the RX-78-2 is like a whole thing. Obviously, the G-Qux timeline, it's been redesigned to look more like an Evangelion. That's because it has the Evangelion Mecha designer. There's a few interesting things that I've heard pointed out by the staff in interviews on Japanese TV. One big thing is that they made the Vulcan cannons much more prominent to make them more realistic. That's kind of cool. The only other thing, and this is purely my own personal speculation, so one of the big things that they always pushed in the original Gundam 0079 was that the Gundam had a core block system, and they tried to make the core block system pretty important to the Gundam. I mean, realistically, I feel like, because they put core blocks in like some Gundam models over the year, I feel like the core block makes the Gundam like, I don't know, it feels like kind of a weak point for me. I feel like it makes the waist too flimsy. So it feels like what they've done in G-Qux is it feels like, I don't know this for a fact, this is purely my own speculation just based on the mecha designs, but it seems like they've redesigned the Gundam's backpack to be the core fighter. Because when I look at the backpack very closely, especially on the RX-78-2, I see it looks like the wings of the core fighter are folded up in here. And it also looks like the bottom of the backpack is like the back of the core fighter. So I super think that if the Gundam still has the core fighter is literally just the backpack. I feel like the wings would pop out, the cockpit would pop out of like slightly behind where the neck is, and it would just fly off like that. It really feels like this is where the core fighter is. That's my own speculation, but yeah. The captured Gundam and Pegasus are delivered to Dozlzabi. A joint team under Cassilia and Dozl begins analyzing the Gundam. As a result, Zeon cancels his plan to build large-scale mobile armors equipped with Psychomu technology. The Pegasus is repainted, renamed the Sodan, and incorporated into Zeon's Space Assault Force. Meanwhile, Garmazabi, commander of the Zeon's Earth Attack Force, resigns from the Zeon's military due to a personal matter. The other thing worth mentioning, so Zeon captures the Pegasus, which of course is the white base. They flipped the white base and the Pegasus around. Previously, it was the Pegasus class white base. I believe in G-Qux, it's the white base class Pegasus. Just one of the annoying changes to annoy people. The other thing, it's listed here in the side material book that when Char captured it, he destroyed the bridge. This potentially means that Bright Noah has been killed. I'm not confirming that for a fact, but he would have been on the bridge at the time, so it's very possible. I think if he doesn't show up in any capacity by the time the series is over, we can write him off as dead, and I'm looking forward to figuring that one out. Speaking of dead people, Garmazabi is alive. Wow, huge twist. So yeah, it seems that because Char did not pursue the white base to Earth, Garma was completely fine. That being said, it looks like he ultimately did resign from the Zeon military due to his relationship with Iselina, and I hope he's doing well. Good for Garma. He deserves it. Now, moving on to the timeline, this is where things get interesting. Between October and November, Odessa and the North American occupation both play out as previously, with the Federation ultimately winning. Then, sometime after that, this is the end of the timeline where things are no longer dated. Zeon executes another colony drop operation against Jaburo, but somehow this doesn't work out. The Federation, at this point, mass produces the gun cannon as the light gun cannon, and this is the RGM-79 in this universe. It is not the GM because, for whatever reason, Char stealing the Gundam caused the Federation not to have faith in it, so they instead mass-produced the gun cannon as the light-type gun cannon. But what's crazy is it is still the RGM-79 because it still got mass-produced in 0079 in the same way that the GM would have been. So that's fascinating. Zeon proceeds with reverse engineering the captured Gundam to develop new mobile suits. Zeonic's MS-14 G-Qux project is defeated in development competition, and a simplified Gundam-based mobile suit is officially adopted instead. At Dozlzabi's request, however, efforts to mass-produce the Big Zam continue. On the moon at Granada, the Flanagan Agency begins installing Psychomu systems into new mobile suits. The first Battle of Solomon erupts, and the Federation employs its solar system weapon. Dozlzabi deploys in the first Big Zam unit and is defeated. Solomon is captured by the Federation. Shalia Bull returns from Jupiter and meets Char Azimuth. A Gundam fitted with a Psychomu system attacks Solomon's docking facilities using bits. Shalia Bull sorties as well, having just received the mobile armor Kikuroga. Zeon places Makube in overall command of the battle for Luna 2, and Federation officer Joaquin, facing defeat, launches a plan to drop Kanpai Island, the captured Forster Solomon, onto Granada. Now, I heard a rumor from a Japanese friend that this was called Operation Stardust. I'm not sure if that was a joke, but if it is called that, that's kind of a deep lore callback. Makube, in turn, orders Char's troops who have been standing by to defend Granada. A second Battle of Solomon begins, and Char launches an attack on Solomon using the Sodan, successfully landing troops on it. Although Char's forces fail to halt the dropping fortress, a phenomenon called Zeknova occurs, foiling Joaquin's plan. So what seems to be implied here is that Char was able to use Psychomu to create an Aurora effect like Amuro's new Gundam at the end of Char's counterattack, and now the Aurora effect has been nicknamed Zeknova in the G-Qux continuity. Luna 2 subsequently falls to Zeon, and the Federation Fortress High Command opens negotiations for a ceasefire. And so the one-year war ends on January 3rd, 0080, with a full Federation retreat. All right, so that's everything on the timeline. I'm just going to go back to the Mecha at this point because I feel like I can get more out of the Mecha than I can like dissecting the timeline without having seen the movie. So let's see what we got next. So yeah, there's a few gun cannons. It looks like at some point there's a gun cannon colored in Gundam colors, like a custom gun cannon. Or is it a light gun cannon? Yeah, I'm not sure what's up with the custom color light gun cannon. The Magellan and the Salamis are exactly the same as ever. There was a special Musai here called the Musai Falmer. It looks to be an armored Musai. I'm not sure who that belongs to. Wait, was the Falmer Char's Musai? Either way, it's got more armor this time around. The Big Zam looks basically the same. It just looks a little bit more like better design because it's designed in CG this time. The only major differences on the Big Zam I can notice is it has the same fuel tanks actually from the Apsless from OFMS team. And it's also got rocket boosters in its legs now, which are great. That actually makes a lot more sense that it would have rocket boosters in its legs. That actually makes it seem way more mobile. That being said, then we have the Brabro. Now the Brabro also looks exactly the same, except this time around it's called the Kikaroga. Now the Kikaroga is a callback to the original 50 episode Gundam notes that Tomino made that I did a video about. Originally, the Kikaroga was supposed to be a mobile suit between the Zeon, but a little bit different. Here's line art of what that version of it existed. The original Kikaroga was the MSN-01, and it was supposedly like a Zeon precursor. But yeah, it got cut out of the anime, and I don't know why Anno chose to rename the Brabro to the Kikaroga. Maybe he just liked the name better, or maybe this is just another small change simply for the sake of fucking with everybody. That being said, what I really like is it does look like they did create a little bit more consistency between the Big Zam and the Kikaroga, where you can kind of see that like they're using like the same like dome parts, which I really appreciate. The light type gun cannon strikes me as kind of random. It does seem like it's a little bit more like the GM cannon than the gun cannon in certain ways, but it's colored like the gun cannon. Either way, it's a mass production gun cannon, go figure. There were mass production gun cannons in the standard UC as well, but this one seems like it's a lot thinner than that. We got line art of the G-Qux. Once again, it really looks like the backpack is a core fighter. I feel like that's something they're doing here. Obviously, we have the Char Red Gundam. Char ultimately painted the Gundam red, and then he equipped bits on it. That's pretty based. The bits are obviously the bits from the canceled LMF. That's actually really cool that they recycled them from that. Also, since the LMF never existed, I'm assuming Lala is alive and out there. Speaking of characters who are alive and out there, it's been confirmed that Cameron Bloom is alive, and he's his usual Jewish self. Cameron, as always, is the biggest loser on the UC timeline. It looks like he's going to be showing up in Amate's storyline. I don't really know what they have planned for him, but it does seem that in this universe, Mirai still did not marry him. And I don't know if that implies that Mirai is dead or for whatever reason he just couldn't marry her, but it seems pretty sad, whatever the story is going to be. And I want to say that's everything that strikes me as worthwhile of going over from this behind the scenes material book. There's a few other things about like the backgrounds and the colony construction. That's all great. Moving on, the only other thing I did want to speculate, there was another interview I read from Hideki Anno in Japanese, and I'm not quite sure where this is going, but Anno was hinting at something to do with the other 7 Gundams in the RX-78 series. I think the implication there was that Zeon would make the other 7 Gundams. Historically, there were the RX-78 1 through 7, and the 3 is the most curious one because I'm not fully sure if the 3 ever existed outside of the Gundam novelization, but the others all showed up in video games. And anyway, I guess long story short, there might be more Gundams popping up in G-QuuuuuuX, but we'll find that out later. All right, this went on for way longer than I expected, so I'm going to wrap up here. Let me know what you guys think. Leave a comment. Thanks. Good night.